exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, indeed. Good old Donna. Linda McPhail carried her and him for so long it isn't funny. Yeah. Long before your time. What time have you got? You close? Okay, it's 4 o'clock. Let's call to order the Planning Committee meeting February 3rd. Adoption of the minutes. Move seconded. All those in favor, contrary carried. February the 18th, we'll meet in this very room. And the first item is a zoning amendment relating to vehicle parking access and maneuvering for small-scale multi-unit housing. We've got Andrew and Josh. And the recommendation that we introduce it and give first, second, and third reading. Floor is yours, gentlemen. The mics are live.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have nothing further to add to the report, would highlight the following. The proposed amendments generally seek to standardise and simplify parking provisions applicable to residential development, particularly single-family and small-scale multi-unit housing development, as part of staff's ongoing monitoring and implementation of small-scale multi-unit housing in the city, and in response to feedback received from local homeowners, builders and designers. The proposed amendment bylaw would set a minimum on-site parking requirement of 0.5 spaces per unit for single-family and small-scale multi-unit housing, standardised driveway widths for all developments on RSM zoned lots, enable consideration of reduced manoeuvring aisles for development on RSM zone lots, provide an avenue for the city to permit alternative access for SMU development, small-scale multi-unit housing, on a case-by-case basis, and permit all residential development, including on RSM zone lots, to provide up to 50% of the required on-site parking as small car spaces. The changes to the zoning bylaw are proposed to streamline implementation of small-scale multi-unit housing development, support housing diversity and viability, and enable greater lot layout, site planning, and interior design flexibility. I'm happy to answer any questions, should you have any.
Michael, I'm going to go to you. Anything on that from your end?
Yeah, thank you very much. Through the chair, just two questions to staff. The first one, when the bills came down from the provincial government, staff had highlighted the impact this would have on trees and green space and porous surfaces, but there's no mention of that in the report. I'm just curious, have other departments taken a look at what this amendment will do to those features of our city?
Okay, Mr. Cooper, do you want to assume that mic? Here, I give you another mic.
Through Mr. Chair to Councillor Wolf, there are other amendments within the overall zoning bylaw that will still seek to preserve the landscaping and the natural landscaping in the front yard. The 50% live landscaping provision is not removed. It's still present. And that's the safeguard that we'll always keep, and that will take precedence over any of these changes. The rear yard setback, where most trees exist in private property, will not be affected by these amendments.
Okay, great, thank you. That's all, Chair.
You good? Okay. All right, Alexa?
Thank you, through the chair. So when I think of some of the homes, I think of there's some on Gary Street, and I know some of them have had some issues where they have a narrow sort of entrance, and then there's a short little bit, and then it widens out into the double driveway, but you can't actually maneuver because you've got that narrow thing in the front. So now you're driving over your grass anyway. Like, is there a better way to do this so that we can, and is this addressing that issue?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, the proposed amendments do seek to address the scenario that you're talking about. They establish a maximum driveway standard, which applies to all single-family and small-scale multi-unit housing development forms. It also allows for a reduced manoeuvring aisle, where technical analysis demonstrates that vehicle manoeuvring on site is still viable. The Director of Transportation has the ability to assess and support a reduced manoeuvring aisle.
Okay, so are people allowed to have like that, do they have to have that weird thing happening with their driveway, or can they just drive into their driveway now? Can you drive two cars in properly without trying to?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, the proposed amendments just align small-scale multi-unit housing with what currently exists for single-family development. So there is still the potential that you would see that kind of L-shaped drive aisle, depending on what is ultimately proposed. So the maximum drive aisle width is dependent upon both the size of the lot as well as the minimum landscaping requirements that are applicable to the front yard. So you may still see designs, and Mr. Cooper can correct me if I'm wrong, where you would have that existing kind of configuration with cars turning in and then making a left or a right into a garage.
Okay, but like if we think of the ones on Gary, it's narrow, it's a two-car garage, like they're cramming everything straight in, but the driveway was narrower than the space for the two cars, right? So you kind of get in and try and shuffle around, but you can't, like it's a lot of weird maneuvering instead of just having a wider driveway. Am I getting this wrong?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, as I understand it, you're indicating that where a drive aisle would normally lie out, I guess.
Yes.
In order to access the garage.
Right.
James?
But this isn't addressing that.
No.
Go ahead, Mr. Cooper.
Well, through Mr. Chair to Councillor Liu, I think what you're talking about is the maximum driveway that's allowed through a front yard setback.
Okay,
That stays, that is absolutely aligned with what we've always known in
Okay.
single-family homes. Earlier version of RSM sought to reduce that to 4 meters, and that's perhaps what the funny wiggle that you get. The funny wiggling happens in the area immediately behind the 6-meter front yard setback. That's where the apron in front of the garage doors are allowed to get wider, and it manifests itself into funny wiggling. Yeah.
okay. Because like we know, especially like on Gary and a few other streets, there's no street parking. So you really do need everybody who's visiting you, everybody who lives there to be able to get their cars onto the driveway, right? So, are we creating livability, parkability?
Well, in a way, so through Mr. Chair to Councillor Liu, in a way, I believe the approach that's being shown by these amendments is to have the parkability back onto private property. I know in the previous RSM, the approach encouraged more street parking because when you reduce the width of a parking access to each property, it gives for a wider parallel parking spot. However, by doing this, the emphasis is back to alignment with what we had before, is to have 2 cars parked
On the lot, because
on the front yard of the
on the
lot.
front yard, yeah. Well, because most of these places don't have backyards anyway, right? So it's tricky, and if there's not enough space to park between you and your neighbor, or if it ends up creating more of a hazard because now you have more, like, you're backing out, you're trying to get back out of your driveway, and now there's a car between you and the oncoming traffic. So this opens it up, is what you're saying.
It returns it to the situation we had when it was a house.
Thank you.
All right, Andy. And,
Thanks, and through the chair. Yeah, thanks for the report. I think it's fairly clear in my mind now. But just a quick comment, like I like the idea of the 1.5 parking spaces per unit, although I think that'll still be pretty tight if, for instance, you have 3 units. And just a comment on the market forces that will determine the areas or the units that are built within 400 meters of a frequent transit line. And if you think about 400 meters extending out from that line, it goes quite deep into some neighborhoods. So have we been able to look at even in other communities, the impact of the no parking regulation in that? Because we can't dictate that, but we can rely on the market forces to determine that, oh, actually we do need a few parking spaces, that no parking spaces isn't really working. Has there been any opportunity to look at what's happening here, but actually in other communities where they've got no parking on that kind of route, because that's part of the provincial legislation that I don't agree with. But can you comment on that? Have we seen that anywhere?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, I can't comment on what we've seen in other municipalities, and I'll ask James to come up here in a second. But in terms of responding to overall to your question, as a result of Bill 44, we can no longer require through our bylaw on-site parking for any dwelling or small-scale multi-unit housing that is within 400 meters of a transit station. However, that does not preclude a home builder from choosing voluntarily to provide that parking on-site.
Yeah, and I'll just end with a comment. I hope that's the case, that builders and the market will determine that that's not actually that viable of an option, because even if you're that close to transit, and even if you can take it to work in the morning and come home, when you get home, I mean, my lived experience is that most people, when they can afford to, will have a vehicle or maybe even two, because they've got a lot of things to do at night, in the evening, on the weekends, with kids, with family, picking up loved ones, picking up grandma, whatever it is, going to medical appointments, and a lot of those things are done with a vehicle, even if you ride your bike downtown, or even if you take transit during the day. So I really hope that the market forces will determine that in order for us to make these units marketable and sell them or rent them, we actually need to have some parking, because I understand Bill 44 doesn't allow us to mandate it. Thanks.
Okay, Carol.
Yeah, thank you very much. And Councillor Hobbs pretty much said everything I was going to say, but I wonder, like I read on page PLN 12 that does not preclude the ability for homeowner, builder, or designer to provide more than the minimum on-site parking if desired. So I'm really pleased that you put that in there. Now, in practical purposes, do you talk to the builders when they come in and maybe suggest that it wouldn't be a bad idea to have more than the minimal parking, because it would affect the saleability of the property or even the rentability if it's a rental?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, Mr. Cooper, feel free to join. I don't believe the conversation is we encourage you to provide more parking. We
No.
set out, here's the minimum required. It is very much the home builder who is usually putting forward their design based on what they believe the market will bear and that will sell. And that in turn results in how much parking they choose to provide on site. But I don't know, James, if you have anything further to add.
Through Mr. Chair to Councillor Day, we've not had one application that did not address the saleability by eliminating parking. We as staff are really not permitted to encourage a design one way or the other. Then we would be serving as their consultant. But we do realize that we've not had any real applications where parking was precluded from their design.
Okay, so just recently in my neighborhood, we had a flop house that opened up, and there were 14 cars attributed to that house that were people who lived there and parked in front of everybody else's houses. So subsequently, if you had guests coming or having a birthday party, there was nowhere for anybody to park. Ultimately, that caused the neighbors in my neighborhood to call bylaws and ask for an inspection of that property, because clearly it was not in the right rules. Anyhow, sorry. I guess what I'm worried about is future parking future parking battles that happen between, let's say you've got a street with 6 houses, and 3 of them have got 4 units on them. Now everybody's parking is affected by that 50% of houses. So what are we going to do as a city to deal with that when we start getting those phone calls from people who live beside or in between these units?
I'll ask.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And through the chair to Councillor Day, yeah, that is one of the concerns that we have with the bills that we did get from the province. What I can say is that we anticipate that permit parking or something like that might be something that we have to implement in areas that have these problems. And we would expect that these would come from sort of a grassroots. People would come and approach us and talk about their parking problems. Quite often we say that is potentially one of the solutions. As you're aware, we certainly had a look at that and on As Your Place. often when we explain the positives and negatives of permit parking, people often don't choose it. But that is one of the potential solutions that we can offer in those cases.
This is similar to what we did in that Brickhouse Park across from the hospital, where all the hospital workers were parking in front of those houses closest to Gilbert, and they were just packed with cars, so.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Day, that is the Azure neighborhood, and when we did that one, we did talk to them and talk about all the rules that would be associated with it, and for the most part, they chose not to move forward with permit parking. Just one of the little cul-de-sacs immediately adjacent to the hospital did. Even where we did permit parking in Spires Road area, we've only had one person actually take us up on that offer. You know, even though some of these areas say they have these problems, they haven't taken us up on that solution very regularly.
Well, we're going to see more of that, I suspect. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, all. And the next item is the Continuous Advisory Committee and the annual report for approval and the registration and the work program to be approved. So we've got Donna Nilfor. Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
ladies,
Chair.
go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Staff doesn't have anything further to add. We're happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Councillor Day has questions.
Thank you very much. So as you know, I'm a liaison from the council to the Seniors Advisory Committee. And I've had a number of the members of that committee reach out about why can't we go to courses and attend events and become more well-informed about the issues that relate to seniors. But the budget for the committee is $2,500. And by the time the recording secretary and the room, and you have to pay for coffee and goodies from the cafe here, that money's spent. So is there any options for them to keep their own minutes to keep that cost down? And is there any option for them to just supply their own coffee or tea so they could save the cost, so there'd be extra money for attending those courses and events?
Through the chair to the Councillor Day, that's city's practice for all the advisory committee to provide coffee and in some cases refreshment, and also having a recording secretary. And what is happening right now at the Seniors Advisory Committee is with accordance of the city's policy.
So like many of the other groups that I belong to, they like, say, West Richmond Community Center, for example, they're able to record their own minutes and they bring in their own goodies. And so it's simply not allowed because this is a council advisory committee? Is that the reason they're so hamstrung?
Through the chair to the Councillor Day, yes.
I wonder if we shouldn't change those rules, because most of the committees I attend, they use their budget for things that actually make a difference to the committee instead of spending it on things that they could do themselves. So I wonder if that isn't something we need to visit as a council and look at relaxing those rules. Any thoughts?
Well, the only thing, we do have a policy for city committees. All of them get $2,500. That's across the board. West Richmond is a different category because they also have their own money and they can do what they want. And they have a party every meeting. So the only thing is we'd have to make a referral to staff to revisit the base grant or base amount for city advisory committees, which is primarily for hospitality, whatever. Okay, I've got further, go ahead.
Through the chair to Councillor Day. So committees, actually, there's options within the committee that we can consider for, in terms of minute taking and for resources in the committee. So if members of the committee if they're willing to bring their own food, I think that's something that we can take a look at. I think that should be fine. I think there are policies within, if you're holding it in the city, in City Hall, I think there's contractual obligations with the caterer here. So that's something we can actually take a look at as well. But in terms of minute taking, there's options we can take a look at.
Do we have a written policy?
For minute takers,
No, for the committees, in terms of the amount, the dollars and cents.
there is no fixed policy on the amount. I think that's something
Maybe that's something
the
we should
budget.
look at.
Well, I just wonder if I'm just opening the conversation because I've heard, because they really enjoy, not every group, but this group really enjoys getting that sort of professional education and attending different events and learning more about how they can be helpful. And I mean, they're such an active group that I hate to quell their interest or their enthusiasm. So maybe we could just start that conversation and, talk to the clerk's department and see if there's a way around it so they could have a little more freedom. It is only $2,500, but I know they could stretch that a long ways if they had the ability. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Moved and seconded. All those in favor, contrary carried. Thank you very much. And the next one is the Intercultural Advisory Committee. Again, the work program and the report. Peggy and Dorothy.
Nothing to add, Mr. Chair. We're happy to answer any questions.
No, Dorothy, I thought you had 2 items. Seconded. All those in favor, contrary carried. Thank you. And our last one is the Cultural Harmony Plan highlights of the report. And that report was circulated, was it not? At least I have a copy of the document. Okay.
To the chair, the report is the one in discussion right now to
Yeah,
be
we're in
received for
discussion.
information.
Okay. All right. Anything to add? Nothing? Moved, seconded? Carol? All right, there we go.
So listed in the report is all kinds of really great information about all the things we're doing to create better cultural harmony. And one of the things that we've done is hire someone to, it's under page 43, second line, temporary staff position, communications coordinator, Chinese media, with the idea of strengthening engagement with proactive outreach to Chinese-speaking community. And that Chinese media reporting, we get it. But does it ever go on like the city website or out to other groups so that they can also know what's happening in Chinese media?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, I'd like to defer that question to our colleagues in corporate communications.
Okay.
Nobody here.
Okay, well, we can ask for a memo on that.
Well, we can ask for that.
I just wonder, since we've got it and we're paying for it, we might as well share it. So if you could maybe just pass that on.
Through the chair to Councillor Day, we'll do that. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, sir.
Okay, all those in favor, contrary carried. Thank you very much. No managers report. We are now adjourned. Thank you all for coming. Okay.